Okay, we're going to move back to our agenda. At this time, we're going to move to item 9.0, which I know a lot of people are very interested in this. This is the third and final reading for the Beechwood Middle Zoning Plan. And after the presentation following, let's see, we're going to, at 11.0, after citizens' participation, we will take a vote. So this portion is for information only. And then when we get to all the voting, we'll vote at that point in time. So at this point, it is information only board, and Mr. Salters will present the third reading of the zoning plan. Mr. Salters?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Little. Bring to you tonight the third reading of the Beechwood Middle School attendance lines. We're very excited about Beechwood opening up, and we'll show you some pictures of that a little bit later on. As you recall, from previous presentations, we use a number of different rationale when we try to develop attendance lines for new facilities. I've listed those here, but one of the main things we're trying to do is make efficient use of our campuses and allow for student growth and permanent facilities where we can. And of course, in this rezoning, we're looking at providing reduced enrollment at Lexington Middle School and Pleasant Hill Middle School. And so I'll walk you through the current middle school lines. We have 3 middle schools in the Lexington area. So we've got Meta Glen, Lexington Middle, and Pleasant Hill Middle School. Of course, you'll recall that Beechwood Middle is opening up in this area up here. Roughly, 3,240 students across that group of schools. And so for first reading, we started out with an attendance boundary scenario that looked like this, where we had involved, Beechwood, obviously, over in this area, Pleasant Hill here, Lexington Middle here, and then Meta Glen in this area. The primary focus of this map that I would just show you is that this line here is the high school, the current high school feeder pattern attendance line. And so to the left would be Lexington High School, and then to the right would be River Bluff High School. And so this zoning scenario created true feeder patterns so that all of the students from Lexington Middle School would feed River Bluff, all the students from Meta Glen as well. And then all the Pleasant Hill and all of the Beechwood students would feed Lexington High School. Just to go back quickly, that line basically runs right through the middle of the Lexington Middle School attendance area. So currently that is a split feeder. So moving forward, we had a number of community meetings, received a significant amount of community input, which was part of that process, where we're very pleased with the input received. And the board, for second reading, saw an attendance line boundary that looked like this, where we basically leave the Meta Glen attendance area lines unchanged for 2018-19. Or from this year, they would remain unchanged for next year. Lexington Middle School would be this area here. We would use the high school boundary still for that creating that true feeder pattern. Beechwood would include around 900 students, and Pleasant Hill at 717. Lexington Middle School would be a little bit smaller at 623. However, we've already talked about tonight some of the traffic improvements in that area. All of that construction is going to be going on over the next couple of years. That's also going to be occurring at Lexington Elementary. So that whole area is going to have a lot of roadway improvements around it. So we feel comfortable with that number being where it is to help with the traffic flow in the general area. And so after hearing additional feedback and making considerations for the things that came in, we're recommending tonight for third reading those same lines that we had before, with Beechwood being in this area, Pleasant Hill again here, excuse me, and Lexington Middle School in this area. So this is the current Lexington Middle Meta Glen boundary, and so we would propose to leave that unchanged. A portion of Lexington Middle School would go into Beechwood, and a portion would go into Pleasant Hill Middle School. And So looking at some other options, this is the feeder pattern breakdown, if you will. The elementary schools would feed this way all of Rocky Creek, all of Lake Murray, and a portion of New Providence. So if you if you look at this map again, one of the questions that we've been asked is, why does this dip down the way it does? Well, this is actually the Rocky Creek attendance area here. And so what happens to a lot of these folks is they're driving this way over to Rocky Creek. They would be very close to Beechwood, so we felt it was appropriate for them to drop their children there and then move on about their way to work or back home. And so instead of driving up to Rocky Creek and then back down to Pleasant Hill Middle School for drop-off. So that's why that dip down occurs on the map. And so moving to Lexington Middle School, portions of New Providence, Lexington Elementary, and Midway Elementary School would feed Lexington Middle. And then Pleasant Hill, all of Pleasant Hill, and then a portion of Deerfield and a portion of Lexington Elementary would feed those areas. And so we're looking at I've already talked about the true feeder. This third reading does preserve that feeder pattern. We feel it's very important to look at that at the middle and high school level as students transition. They really start to form bonds with the high school that they're going to go into, whether it be through athletic programs, through arts programs, or through academic programs. They identify with that high school and spend a fair amount of time in activities related to the school. So we feel it's very helpful for them to start forming those bonds early as a middle schooler in the 6th and 7th grade, and then on up into the 8th grade as they can continue to participate in some of those sports. So true feeder pattern in this third reading. And then we are recommending, again, the grandfathering option, so that if a rising 8th grader or current 7th grader would like to stay at the middle school that they are zoned for, they can have that option. And then the parent or guardian would provide transportation. And so we're looking at that. And then that would also hold true with our immersion programs that filter up. So just to kind of recap, there's some key dates that we've run through, and we're here to the bottom of the list now. This is just a highlight of all of the meetings and input that we've received. And that's brought us to this point, to our third reading. So I'll be happy to answer questions that you may have. And Dr. Little, yes?
Do you want to talk about some of the grandfathering options that we have? We have a special option.
Yeah, so if I could just go back to the map here briefly, there's an area of the Pleasant Hill, what would be newly designated Pleasant Hill attendance area right in this area here, where we have an option to potentially provide an additional bus stop. We have our alternative education services located at Rosenwald, and we run bus routes for those students. And we have the potential of creating an additional bus stop from the Rosenwald Community Learning Center over to Lexington Middle School. So we're looking at the potential of gathering students in this area at Rosenwald, and then giving them bus transportation over to Lexington Middle School if they couldn't drive. This would be for current 7th graders, and of course we would bring them back to Rosenwald in the afternoon. For current 7th graders, and this would be just kind of a one-year option to allow those students to grandfather if they so chose to do that. So that's one of the areas that we're looking at. We've looked at immersion in this area as well. There are actually currently 2 students in the who are now Beechwood Middle that are in the immersion program that would go to Pleasant Hill that have we've been notified by Pleasant Hill that they may have had some transportation concerns because they rode the bus in the afternoon. We've actually contacted those families, and One of those students, actually the parents are planning to drive the student back and forth, and then the other parent is an employee, and we're trying to work out some logistics there to try to get that child to either be able to stay at Pleasant Hill or to go to this other school where the employee works. So we feel like we've addressed the immersion program and also the grandfathering concerns that came up that you guys had us look into between second and third reading on those areas. So be happy to answer any questions.
I think we had some parents ask if we would hold like a tour or an open house, I think particularly at Pleasant Hill Middle. And I know that we have plans once Beechwood is closer to being ready, because it's not ready for a tour right now, that we were going to host an open house. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that?
Yes, the plan would be to host an open house at Pleasant Hill Middle School for those those families who are new to that campus. Dr. Rivers is very excited about that opportunity to showcase his school. And then there he is in the back.
There he is.
There he is.
Dr. Rivers.
Thanks for being here, Dr. Rivers. See, he's got a smile on his face. He's very proud. And then at Beechwood, you'll see from the pictures, we're not quite ready for a tour there. But later this summer, we would host an open house for those families who will be attending that facility in the fall. So we would be certainly interested in doing that.
That'd be great. And thank you, Dr. Rivers, for doing that. And Ms. Jenkins, I don't know if she's here, but thank you to Ms. Jenkins for hosting hers. Any other questions, board, or comments at this point in time? Okay, thank y'all. That was a lot of work. We appreciate all the work that y'all.
Yeah, I have a question. Have we received any feedback since February the 7th?
Since February 7th?
Yes.
I have received the information that was given to us at the last board meeting, a copy of a petition that was sent earlier. But that's, and then we've had some follow-up meetings about some of these areas related to concerns citizens have.
I've only had one email since the last meeting, and I believe all of you were copied on it as well. So that's the only communication I've had, just the one email. And board, anybody else? Okay, great. Okay, we'll take a vote shortly, but we wanted to get that out. The main reason we wanted to move that to that point of the agenda is because if anyone did want to comment on the zoning, we still want to hear from you, and this is your time to approach the board and let them hear your thoughts. If you have additional thoughts, I know we have received lots and lots and lots of communications regarding the zoning, and we appreciate everybody that took the time to email, go out to the portal and submit a comment, or the groups that submitted the petitions. We really appreciate you letting us know your thoughts. The phone calls, I can see some people in here I've spoken with personally, and we all welcome that. We welcome anybody who wants to approach the board.